Speaking of nostalgia, looks like we are getting Jorge Masvidal versus Nate Diaz too. Now, this is an interesting fight. Dana has said that I'll probably be for the BMF belt again, which is because I would have thought that, well, let me step back a second. Dana had a BMF belt was a one-time thing. I think we all knew that that was maybe, speaking a little too soon, depending on how well the pay-per-view did, depending on how well Masvidal did, who knows. But you would think technically that belt would have been eradicated or unified, so to speak, with Usman once Usman beat Masvidal. I guess not. I guess they're bringing it back again for another gimmick. And Diaz in a rematch is interesting in a lot of ways because, as many people have pointed out, Diaz got clearly beat. Yes, the fight probably got stopped a little bit too early based on that cut. In my opinion, Diaz is got to. That's just going to happen every fight. If you're going to have a ref call a fight for that, it's probably going to happen again. He's taken so much scar tissue. He always bleeds. It's a thing that happens. And I don't think it was. I'd have to go back and rewatch it. At the time, I didn't think it was a bad enough cut that it should be stopped. But I also don't think not stopping the fight would have made a huge difference. I am not of the core belief that, if Diaz had into those later rounds, Masvidal would have gassed and Diaz would have suddenly pulled it out of nowhere. It's possible, but in my opinion, Diaz was getting outstruck everywhere. And he doesn't like to go to the ground that much. He wasn't going in for takedowns, shooting, setting up feints, doing things that may have caused Masvidal a little bit of trouble. No, he was trying to box Masvidal, and Masvidal just straight boxed him. So I know from that standpoint, it's not the most exciting rematch. I know from that standpoint, a lot of people agree that it's kind of like, really? Like, you're not going to get anybody else in there? Why not do Conor? Why not do, well, besides Conor not being available, a big part of this is, one, getting Nate Diaz back to the table because he is a draw. So, after that fight, he was upset about the doctor stoppage, kind of just left and made it sound like, who knows, maybe he's done forever, maybe like in 2 years, classic Nate Diaz. This gets him back at least, which if he starts fighting regularly again, he's a draw. He's a bona fide draw ever since he beat McGregor. So that would be huge to get Diaz back to fold and fighting regularly. Two, it's what at this point with Masvidal, what else do? You could set up the Leon Edwards fight. You could go that route, but if Edwards beats Masvidal, they had a little bit of heat with each other when they had that backstage brawl, cut him open, but that was a long time ago, and that heat's kind of died down. You could do Covington, but he's already booked against Woodley. You could wait and then do Covington, but again, the heat on that has died down a little bit. That one I think is still in play in terms of a good fight for Masvidal and Covington, both in terms of fan interest and things going on. But right now he's booked, and who knows if Masvidal wants to deal with another wrestler. My guess is Covington would do a lot of what Usman did to Masvidal. Just wrestle him, hold him down, decision him. I know Masvidal said had he had a full camp that, it would have gone differently, but there was nothing I saw his past performances where he's, historically struggled with wrestlers or with ground game, really. I don't think it really would have gone that much different, and I don't think it would go that much different. So if you're the UFC here, Masvidal is clearly a draw. They got a big bump in pay-per-view for Masvidal versus Usman almost entirely on Masvidal's side, not really because Usman is a draw based on some of the social media metrics, some of the other metrics in play. It was clearly Masvidal pulling all of that after Diaz. If you send him in matchups at welterweight where he gets beat cleanly, Wonder Boy, right? You could do that rematch, but Wonder Boy just schooled him last time at UFC 217. Very possible that happens. It's, I think that's a bad stylistic matchup for Masvidal, just in terms of Wonderboy's technique. He still looks amazing. Yes, he got finished by Anthony Pettis, but that was shot. He was crushing Pettis up until then. He's beaten Luque since then pretty soundly. He's still very good. Wonderboy is still in the top 5 in my opinion of the division. So again, you do Masvidal versus Wonderboy, you do Masvidal versus Covington, Masvidal versus Edwards, and he loses. I don't think you're going to name star power transfer rub in terms of, oh, that guy beat Masvidal, now he's a star. Doubt that's going to happen unless it's crazy emphatic fashion. They go on a great post-fight speech, who knows. And secondly, you're not going to get the juice out of Masvidal that you have right now, right? Like, since he beat Diaz, he's had one fight. And that fight clearly showed his drawing power. Clearly, showed, okay, if we put him against somebody else, like another guy like McGregor or somebody else, this could be really big. If he goes out there and loses one of those other guys, then especially like in a boring decision, that's star talent wasted that Masvidal now has. He's kind of broken through so that he's partially in the mainstream. He's been on ESPN. He's been on other shows. He has some mystique around him. Losing that would be waste in terms of the UFC having someone now that isn't going to be Conor McGregor, may not even be Nate Diaz. Who knows? It's only had one fight, but he has a lot of juice and a lot of drawing power. Getting him in a fight decision poorly, that would kill. Masvidal needs some wins. Masvidal needs some fun fights. Even if he loses, they need to be fun and exciting in order to keep that alive and kind of grow his star power, or at least maintain it so he can get these pay-per-view buys. And a fight with Diaz does that perfectly. A, it's a guy he's already clearly beat. B, it's another big name that a lot of casual viewers, for the Nate Diaz hardcores out there, that was like, oh, if it had gone to the later rounds, who knows? I mean, that this will, get them to watch 100%. And it even for those of us looking at this and saying, why, he just clearly beat him, why are you doing it again? In the long run, it's going to show that he beat Diaz twice, and that will look impressive on his resume. 6 months, a year after that fight, if he beats Diaz twice, that's going to look impressive. It's going to look very impressive, especially when McGregor technically hasn't done that yet. He had a close majority decision win over him, and he lost once. So that kind of adds to some of the mystique to Masvidal and resets him so that he has some time to maybe work on some of his other tactics to beat somebody like Usman or Covington or Wonderboy. And that's important because it keeps that drawing power alive. So the UFC is putting this match together, I think, for those two big reasons: is getting Nate Diaz back at the table so they can utilize him in other matches, and keeping Masvidal power alive. Is it the most fun stylistic? I mean, we've already seen it, and it wasn't long ago. So, maybe it's a little bit more competitive, but it might just be Masvidal outboxing Diaz again. Is going to have that same feel of like, oh, it's the BMF belt and all that? No, of course not. Even though BMF belt is up for grabs, and that's part of the gimmick, it's not going to be the same feel, not going to be the same excitement for most, especially the hardcores, but for most fans. But will it keep two historical, cash cows, so to speak, even if they're not McGregor or, GSP or whatever level, even if they're not that level, is going to keep them still in the game? Yes, no matter win or lose. Because even if Diaz loses again, I think he's well on his way to having that Lesnar status of doesn't matter, we want to see him fight. So we'll see what happens, but I again think that is why they are putting this together. And if Diaz wins, then you have a great trilogy set up. I mean, come on. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that fight goes. Hopefully it's entertaining, but that is why, from the business side, why they're doing Nate Diaz versus Masvidal.